So, Christian, listening to obviously these guys, are deep into the technology, but on the customer level, your responsibilities around entertainment. How do you view the quality of experience as a critical part of the equation to make sure you attract new customers, maintain new customers, and stay relevant in the value chain?
Yeah, it's interesting because we happen to be in the midst of the World Cup at the moment, so the discussion about concurrency and so on is quite significant. Although, outside of World Cup and outside of royal weddings, what are those live moments? There's actually much more distributed demand in general, because our audience, we know, is primarily watching on-demand content. So as a consequence of that, there tends to be a lot less peaks in demand, because there aren't specific live moments when you absolutely need to serve that.
Yeah.
How about Love Island?
Well, good point.
Hold on, I've got a text.
Tell me
It's
what
a big one. 6 weeks.
And that's not just about viewing; it's the social media
how Love
traffic
Island
that
fits up against the World Cup game last night.
And Wimbledon as well, all together.
But things like Snapchat and Facebook and the social media must be whirring around at the moment around some of these events that are actually bringing families together again, which is an amazing thing. Not only just people watching in solitary confinement with their mobile devices, but it's bringing people to share content, which is important, I think.
That's right. I mean, our recent partnership with Snapchat is a good example of trying to reset the boundaries of what partnerships with telcos can look like. We were the first telco in the world to do a Snapchat partnership. With the Pugafly, the combination of a pug and a butterfly that poos digital hearts, and you can train it and you can take it for walks, and so the 3 brand now exists in the virtual world of Snapchat. And I think that's the kind of thing that telcos need to do to try and stay relevant, because the audience of tomorrow is using Snapchat. They're not using Facebook, and indeed I think that's also a challenge to the OTT providers like Netflix. It's all very well producing shows like The Crown. I happen to love it, but my kids wouldn't be interested in it. So it's behoving on both sides of the equation, both distribution and creation, to try to challenge themselves to stay relevant for tomorrow's audience.
Yeah.
There's so much content out there. Like for us, it's all about curation, and when we work with a partner, it's anyone can obviously access video content through Facebook or YouTube, but people don't want to be able to. People want to be served content very quickly and be able to see the best of that content. And it's all about the curation and entertaining someone in a small space of time.
Definitely, That's a great point. And there is almost a plethora, an overwhelming choice, isn't there, of content across TV, across mobile devices. How do we help bring some of this together so that it's not so overwhelming for the user?
Yeah. So for us, where we would have our strengths is because we are recognisable brands. So when the consumers are turning on their service, they're sort of seeing recognised brands and content. Certainly when we are doing deals now with the operators, they want multi-screen rights. So it's not mobile only, it's set-top box as well. And they want to be able to have their customers be able to see our content or any content deals that they do on any single platform within the house or on the mobile.
But there is a huge fragmentation currently going on in the marketplace right now. Particularly if you look at what's happened in the US with all the cord cutting, people are signing up to a number of services, and ultimately that leads to a disastrous experience, because you end up having to download 5 different apps, 5 different billing relationships. You go into one app to find what you want, you can't find it, you come out.
Well, how do you manage all the passwords? Keeping that technology
that's the challenge.
Updated.
So I think Christian absolutely nailed it on the head earlier on when he talked about partnerships, and I think we're starting to see a new wave now, and the acceptance of the telcos to say, look, we can't afford these costly rights anymore. They've tried it, they've dabbled in it, and the ROIs are extremely challenging. So we're now starting to see kind of some telcos refocus and say, well, let's position ourselves as an aggregator. And to Gene's point, it's great that they can get those multi-screen rights, so at least then they can have that much more joined up experience across those different screens.
If you look at, we always have to go back and look at what the customer is doing and how the customer feels. But if you take into account what did we used to have when I was young, we had 3 channels, and you paid your license fee. I think there's a space for predictive analytics and machine learning to understand what's going on, what the consumer wants, what the customer wants, and have that. You just want the ultimate recommendation engine across all of everything that's out there, all of the content. Google knows what time I leave for work and tells me what the traffic's like. Why can't I walk into a room and my TV tell me what I want to watch?
I heard a great stat the other day, which was that on a monthly basis, 42% of people who pay for on-demand video have paid for something they already have access to on one of their existing subscriptions, which was a really revealing sort of factoid, and I think it speaks to this issue exactly as you're saying, Matt, which is that people have multiple subscriptions. We have the same problem in the music industry. There's a plethora of choice, but it's extremely fragmented, as Paolo was saying. And how do you solve that? And I think there is a disruptive play there to try to solve that for the consumer, because it's a pain point which is has emerged in the last kind of 24, 36 months or so, because, way back when, either there were few channels or there was Sky with all their channels, but it was one EPG. But now everyone has half a dozen EPGs, and how do you fix that? Yeah. So there's definitely a play for curated or algorithmically managed interface that brings everything into one place.
Dare I say it, but do you think that mobile networks could play that disruptive role, given the data they have about customer usage, given what they know about trends and the analytics and the ability to invest in AI? Could the operators play that role?
We could, if and when we have the wherewithal to gather the data that we need. I mean, in average, mobile networks tend to hold 6 to 8 data points on their customers. Google have about 350 plus. So there's a huge gap in terms of what we know about our consumers in order to solve that problem. But at 3, we're working on that. We've launched the 1-2 service, which has a 7-figure number of weekly users, and is very popular. And in exchange for getting a lot of free stuff, they agree to share with us a lot of information, which allows us to develop that knowledge. And there's a way to run. I mean, at least for us. But the more data we can develop, the more we can predict, and the more we can understand our customers better, and try to find how we solve those pain points that we know about.
Let's get back to an issue we talked about earlier, because I think it is sort of linked with this kind of the trends in audiences. But sports, and generally sports viewing, and you guys, this is a topic that's close to you guys, of course, but sports rights, are they getting out of control in terms of the cost? I mean, we're seeing some of these players now, like Amazon, getting into it. We're seeing DAZN getting into it. We're getting, we're seeing all sorts of new players in this space. Is it going to get unaffordable for the traditional broadcasters? Are there certain sports that will never go that way, and we'll never go through those premium price hikes? But more importantly, what does the future look like? Is this the last World Cup, for instance, that will be broadcast? Free to air broadcast traditionally, yeah. Will we be looking at that as a very different experience at the next World Cup?
Again, how long have we got, Mark?
Yeah, not long.
I think the prices are certainly going just in one direction, and obviously we can look at what's happened with the Premier League here in the UK, and prices have come down since the previous rights auction, certainly for the domestic rights. I think there's clearly one trajectory overall, not just the value of sports rights, but just generally content rights in the whole, and it's just heading in one direction, because it's not just about one single sport, but it's about having a plethora of sports rights. So when you start thinking about the other sports rights, and they are escalating out of control. The challenge is for many of these providers, can they maximise the value of the asset that they've got? So great example, obviously, because we've got Matt here from BT Sport. Is BT doing a good enough job of promoting BT Sport not only into its BT base, but also the CEE base. Beyond that, in terms of the relationships as well, in terms of the carriage agreements. Now, someone with Amazon coming in, clearly there's a statement of intent there. They now have ATP tennis. They showed Queens. They showed Eastbourne. They're going to be showing the US Open this year. If they start investing more in the sports rights, then they're going to have to start thinking about offering some form of prime sports bundle. It's not just the cost of the rights, but it's also the production costs associated with actually hosting that event. So the costs are really spiralling out of control. And then, of course, like you say, you do have the new players, not just Netflix, but you've got the Netflix of sports, the Zone as well, that's sweeping up buying. They bought the Serie A rights in Italy. They made big plans in Germany, Japan,
But
Canada.
are these players going to be pushing up the price of these rights? And so, someone like Three, I can understand BT because it has national coverage with its fixed network, but someone like Three, where you're sort of one of 4 players, does it make sense to go for national sports rights, given the price hikes that we're seeing?
So the rights space is a really interesting space for us at the moment, but in the majority of cases we'll work with established rights holders rather than try to compete directly on those, because in order to make those work, you have to distribute and redistribute, aggressively in order to get any return, and it is a marginal environment to be in financially. So where do I see it going from our point of view? I think we will look to partner primarily as the first option. But the content space as a whole, outside of the video game environment, is not an environment with much upside financially. I mean, if you look at the music and video space, across the board, it's the margins are slim or zero. I mean, Spotify's loss-making, Netflix is hugely loss-making. I mean, these are amazing global businesses that have massive reach and huge clout in the industries that they operate in. But if you want to see big upside, you need to go and talk to Epic Games, who make Fortnite, because that's where the money is. So from our point of view, it's a major challenge trying to make those partnerships work and still find enough in it for everybody, so that it actually can be balanced across both sides.
Just, it's worth adding, naturally, the rights owner wants to maximise the value of the rights.
Yeah.
They want the new players to come in. So they're going to continue repackaging the rights to favour those guys. But, the telcos who have been investing heavily, have started to rethink their approach. It's amazing to think that next year, right now, as things stand, BT TV will be the only place in the UK where you can watch all of the Premier League football, given that their partnership approach in terms of being an aggregator now. So that gives you a sense of where we're going, and there's a lot of realism going in to the marketplace right now.
Yeah. So we've been having, we did some work with Eurosport around Pyeongchang, and what we were doing is we were helping promote the games to youth. And that's the issue with these SVOD services and subscriptions for live sports. They struggle getting younger people to watch them. Because of the price range or because they don't want to sign up for long-term commitments. So what we were doing is developing social strategy and using official content mixed with user-generated content and packaging it in a way to drive tune-in, push people over to the Eurosport app.
Eurosport Player.
Eurosport Player.
And
where they had an offer for that 1 month when the Olympics are on.
And then they were forging telco partnerships to distribute Eurosport Player, given their exclusivity over the Olympics in Europe. And they've made a huge investment now in PGA as well. So
that was astonishing to see. That sort of came out of nowhere, didn't it?
It's phenomenal, But you look at some of these figures. We're talking about $1 billion here. The Zone as well, with the boxing across the Atlantic. Again, billion.